Well, here we are, as promised. We have Aristo with us, and we haven't discussed a whole lot. He says there's many different areas he could go off in, and I'm going to let him run the show and maybe butt in from time to time if he triggers a thought for me. But really, I'm going to let you go, Aristo. Go ahead.
Well, it's good to see everyone again. This is the third video here, and as usual, I don't have a title. We'll see what we can come up with at the end of the video. Again, Ron, I'm looking at your clock on the wall, so it's 9:36 over there. I'll try to keep it less than 33 minutes.
Okay.
It's not easy, you know.
I know.
It's not easy because, let's put it this way. In the past, Ron Van Dyke was a certain person with a certain disposition. Let's recap. In 2011, Ron Van Dyke started with the ninth wave material. That's what drew me to, listen to these video casts. And as the ninth wave kept going, I entered the picture after it came to the end, and I noticed that you, Ron, were losing hope. Almost like being disappointment. Okay, we were promised this ninth wave. Where is it? Up until that point, and I think you began video casting right after the Fukushima event, or right before, or something like that.
Well, it was January 2011 that I started doing it daily. I had videos before that, but I wasn't doing it every day.
Okay. And most of those were, I don't know if they were actually uplifting, but they were very loving, very positive in that sense, always genuine. The Fukushima event happened, and then around that period, around June, that's when I started listening to it, came across you, and I noticed, that it was about the ninth wave. In fact, I was interested in the ninth wave material, and this is why, I Googled it and your name came up. So I started listening, and then, I became a regular listener, and then I came on the Facebook page and I started commenting. It wasn't until a year later that we started doing videos, or maybe 2 years later, even around 2013. So in those years, I came to notice certain patterns. Now, the first pattern was, again, I started basically contributing to the Facebook page when this ninth wave thing started dying down. And you came up and said, well, what's going to happen? I've been disappointed. Then things became more pragmatic, maybe less spiritual, and you moved into there was the Drake material. There was the RuSA thing. Then there was the Swiss Indo thing, and before that there was the OPPT. This was the phase, and finally the ambassador. This was the phase of outward action. So in essence, we didn't have inward action as I would define it. Inward action for me means working on yourself, perceiving the world from the inside. Basically, you let the world teach you on the one hand, and on the second hand, you stimulate a cultivation in yourself in order to overcome your programming and strengthen yourself so you are able to act on the outside in ways that are not quite how most people would expect action should be. Not quite where you transcend the five senses, where you are more intuitive, where you have more insight, where you can actually affect the outcome of events through your own will to a certain extent. You see, some people say you create your own reality, whether that's true or not. We discussed it.
I don't buy that.
Of course. But every mystic believes that you influence your reality.
I do believe that.
So, in other words, you can manifest something through the power of your will if your will is stronger than the external circumstance and stronger than your own programming. So, in other words, it's almost like there's a flow of a river. You can divert the flow of the river within a certain sense, and that may help you. You can navigate a boat on the river back and forth. It's very hard to go upstream, but you could do it with sufficient force, but you cannot change the course of the river itself without destroying the land around it and all of this. So the point is, you create your own reality. That sense, again, we fall into an either-or mindset and enter misunderstanding. Just like, oh, the ninth wave came, change didn't happen, so it's all crap. Oh, I went into this group that's, you know, however they call themselves, they're supposed to make change, they disappointed me, so it's all crap. You see? Or there's another type of person that just keeps going, keeps butting their heads against the resistance without considering what they're doing wrong or what they're confronting wrong or where they're being misled, learning from their mistakes. You know, it's just the same thing over and over again, trying to get the same outcome by doing the same action in a different form, the definition of insanity, in other words.
You know, I've tried to shift things around, and when I get forced into a different direction, I may be resistant, but I ultimately take a different direction.
Exactly, you do. But again, the different direction, this pattern that I'm describing is basically the pattern of expectation. It's not quite hope. It's a kind of Christian-style faith. So I believe this Christian-style faith, basically, you know, the word is this, have faith in it, and no matter what, even if it never happens, still have faith in it, because if you don't, you know, the outcome is the worst possible scenario, beyond your wildest dreams. You'll go to hell, or it's all, or, you know, worse than anything you can imagine. It's almost a kind of extortion to have an expectation on what somebody else tells you is a positive outcome, whatever this holy book says. And it's expressed in such a way, such a vague way, that you get to fill in the blanks, and so you personalize it, you know, accordingly, as long as you all for the purpose of doing what this religion tells you, of having a certain morality, a certain energy, a certain psychology. And this just so happened to suit certain folks in authority. All of this taints your interaction with the world. And so without inner work, without modifying that, anything you do is doomed to failure. So the thing is, if you engage in outer work and it's doomed to failure, then something on the inside is wrong or needs correction. Wrong is not a proper word, but it needs correction or healing before you can actually further engage with the outside. And not just engage, but evaluate it. Because when the inner situation is in need of correction or harmonization or healing, and it always is, but I mean, beyond a certain point, accordingly, your evaluation of the world also becomes flawed. Now, of course, nobody has a perfect evaluation of the world. But when the flaws exceed a certain limit, then things start really not working for us. And then we come into even worse conclusions, and we end up in a spiral that's completely destructive. In fact, our attempts to avoid correcting ourselves and keep correcting the world end up in destroying both ourselves and the world. And this is what the system tries to lead us to do. In other words, destroying ourselves and the world, that sounds harsh, but we sabotage ourselves. We sabotage ourselves, and if we sabotage ourselves, we sabotage our actions. If we sabotage our actions, all we have to do is take one wrong turn to hit a brick wall. We don't have to go through some elaborate, it doesn't take effort to fail, in other words. All it takes is consistently making the mistakes that we are designed to perceive. We are designed to self-correct. If we do not self-correct at every step, and that means that's where ego comes in and says, oh, you're too good to self. No, somebody told us so. No, I am good if I act according to my nature. Self-correction doesn't mean I'm always wrong. It's not a matter,
right.
it's not a matter of wrong or right. It's the whole self-correction pattern is being right. Self-correction just means that you get feedback from your environment, you process that feedback accordingly, and then you act to adjust your course. Because what your course was a second before is not the same as what it should be a second later. The world is not linear. You never go in a straight line. You're always going through curves, so you have to constantly turn this way, adjust that way, increase your comfort zone in a million tiny ways that your conscious mind cannot even comprehend, let alone organize and control. So However, if you open up yourself and you are functioning correctly, shall we say, and that is not an either or thing, it's a matter of degree. If you are functioning beyond a certain point correctly, then you can adjust your course, and things may not make sense today, but you are on a course where they will increasingly make sense for you with respect to what you're doing. Now, the thing is, that may lead you far away from your current belief system. That's what you were discussing, I guess, in another video. But it doesn't mean you have to contradict the essence of your belief system. That's what we're afraid of. We're afraid of giving up our beliefs because we think we have to give up ourselves in the process, or give up that the belief basically is who we are. I am a Christian.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've known since I was a kid that I was here. I mean, I've had this concept that I was here to help initiate or bring in the kingdom of heaven on earth, whatever that meant. And it's changed over the course of time, but it's still the same basic principle.
Exactly. See, the whatever that means, that is a flexible concept. And you don't have to give the concept up. But if you rigidly define it, and again, the word rigidity is very, very relative. And I speak to everybody here, whoever listens. I speak to myself as well when I say these things. It's that when our identity feels threatened, and I don't speak of the ego, which is a false identity. In fact, the ego is what threatens our identity. And again, when I say identity, I'm not talking about some spiritual, nebulous, higher self concept. I mean our sense of being. How we feel, our sense of purpose, our sense of orienting in the world, our sense of relationship with the world is also our identity. It's not just something we are in isolation. If you change the environment completely, if you put a man or a woman who was accustomed to the city in the desert, their identity is going to change. Not just their behavior, but over time, if you put a person through hell, their very identity can change in order to survive. A person who was hopeful and optimistic may become a completely different person. All of that is part of the greater identity, of course. So again, we come to the saying that I expressed in a much older video, that there by the grace of God go I. When you see another person suffering, it can easily be you under those circumstances, maybe not in the same way. So in that sense, we notice how terrifying it is when an establishment imposes to control our environment and our lives, when we are not free. In other words, that freedom is not just telling you where to go and what to do, that lack of freedom. It is telling you who you are and who you should be and how you should be. It's very, very major because it touches the core of your being, where you can still be a conscious observer of your life, but then it's not your life. And it's not you who is really living it. It's almost like you've been stolen from yourself and placed in another body, in another person, in another context. That's how it feels, and that's terrifying because it's not the way it should be. It is not the divine will. The true divine will always makes us feel good, not in a comfortable, addictive sense, but meaningfully purposeful, complete, fulfilled. So you had a phrase in your blurb, I guess, and I wanted to go back to that. Again, it seems I may be jumping, but my theme here is essentially the patterns that I've noticed in Ron Van Dyke's videos. All of these were patterns of expectations. They were not so much patterns of action. Even the patterns of action with the various groups were expectations. Here's the group that's going to save humanity. I'm with them. Here's the ninth wave. I'm with it. It's more like a prophet of something that's coming rather than a participant in what's coming, or somebody who is bringing what's coming. I am not bringing heaven on earth. I am not part of being the initiation of heaven on earth. I am just the guy who tells you heaven's coming, and there it is. So, and I'm with them, and I'm on that side, and I'm coming. So this is the pattern that I perceive, the pattern of the herald of heaven on earth. So heaven on earth, as I perceived it to Ron Van Dyke, was a specific initiation of events. First we had the ninth wave, then we had the various geopolitical organizations or socio-economic organizations, culminating with the ambassador. When all of that failed, in essence, and it failed not because Ron Van Dyke failed, it failed because the vision wasn't complete. Heaven on earth is not a specific initiation. I mean, the thing that came closest to it was the idea of the ninth wave, but its flaw was the abrupt change that Carl Calleman proposed. He even said when it, I think he said, and that's how I interpreted it, essentially it was a, that the effect, he thought the effect would be immediate. Time will collapse, and the eternal moment, all of this.
And then he died.
Yeah. And did he die?
Didn't he? I thought he did.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't look up. I thought he was still around, but anyways.
I don't think so.
I
could be wrong, but I thought he died not long after the ninth wave collapsed and everything.
Oh, I was reading his stuff in 2012 for a while, but maybe, I don't know. That's the thing.
It's been a while.
If he did, I wouldn't be surprised, because that's how some people invest so much in change, like you did. It will either destroy their lives when it doesn't happen, or they will give up. And the thing is, it's not the event failing that killed them. It's their own addiction to their expectations that got them. It's the fact that you placed all your eggs in the basket, not of the event, but on the expectation of the event. That's where your energy was. Because you can easily go and invest in an event and then, let the outcome happen. But the condition that if my expectation fails, then hope is lost. Expectation, by definition, according to the dictionary, hope by definition is the expectation of a desire being fulfilled. So when you go into hell, according to, Dante's Inferno, you abandon all hope. So when you abandon all hope, you ultimately enter hell, or loss of life, or loss of meaning in your life. So hope shouldn't be blind. A lot of people are artificially fabricating hope. They need something to hold on to. And maybe that is where the loss of hope leads us into hell, because it's not real. It's an expectation of something that is meaningful, but the medium, the thing that we depend on, may not be real, it may be convenient more than it is real. So that's the thing. It's like we are afraid of the process. And in my opinion, or we avoid the process because it's difficult. The process is where we need to dedicate our lives, in my honest opinion. The process is where heaven comes to earth, whatever the process is for us. And this is what the establishment tries to destroy. I was promoting meditation, not quite meditation, but inner work. I've always promoted inner work, or at least my viewpoint, and not just meditation. And I've seen so many people promote meditation. I consider that to be very, very simplistic. It's more than just that. Now there's research coming out saying that meditation not only allegedly does not help, like they say it did, in terms of relaxation and such, it can also harm you. Now, I don't know if that's legit or not. What I do know is that this is something the establishment will latch on to, and that many, many people who have not been doing things right as far as the inner work stuff is concerned, they will latch on to it to validate themselves, and thus they will try to promote, well, I didn't fail. It wasn't my action, because they say, well, that's blaming the victim, me, So I didn't do anything wrong. The meditation thing must be wrong. So all you people are wasting your time. Stop doing it. In fact, I've read some things where they say, take your meds. Taking your meds is more effective than meditation. And it's like, hey, man, doing nothing is better than taking meds. And I'm talking the psychotropic stuff that psychiatrists prescribe that we know is really. Well,
I don't touch any of those. I have no prescription drugs in my thing, but I do take vitamins and supplements.
Yeah.
Regularly.
And how's your sleep? Is your sleep better than it used to be?
Well, I've got that stupid smart meter right on the up wall at the head of my bed. And I got better sleep last night than I've gotten recently. But there's a lot of excitement, though.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's.
But you're not like on the 2 hours and 1 hours like you used to be, are you? I mean, you're getting more than 4 hours or 5 hours.
If I get 4 or 5 hours, that's really good. I have nights where it's only like an hour to 2 hours and I'm awake.
Okay.
So I'm never getting the REM sleep that's necessary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I said, and you tried melatonin and all that, and that didn't work, and all these things. For a while, the vitamin C seemed to be working.
Well, I still do it.
Yeah, but you need large doses, I guess.
I take 5 pills a day, 1,000 milligrams of each pill. I take 5 a day.
Yeah. But sometimes that's not assimilated. It all depends. In any case, you're back to the same pattern. You feel better than you did. Many people are saying, oh, we're noticing the old Ron Van Dyke come back. So that means that the wheel is turning, and we're back doing videos again. And if I can do videos with you, it means that you're at a state where you're in the sense where the harmony of the energy or your own sense is closer to what it used to be than when you were in the crisis period. And you're also changing your environment. You're not going to be dependent on your son or your family or the place where you live. You're going to a completely different place. You say it's for a month, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that's going to be like a test, and then you're going to come back.
But, I had my ticket. I return at the last. I go out on the first day of the month from Florida, and I return on the last day of the month from Australia.
Okay.
And I arrive back in Florida on the last day of the month. Although my trip there, I'm leaving on the 1st and getting there on the 3rd.
Yeah. So your life is opening up in a whole new way. And again, there's an expectation. This time, it's not an international event. And it's not a spiritual event or a cosmic event. This time, it's personal. And thus, it's more under your control. Now, this personal thing may also be you have to say, okay, now this pattern in my life of this expectation and disappointment has been repeating. So now, life may be turning you into a sense of looking toward on the inside. Looking on the inside personalizes us more, most often. Basically, we deal more in personal relationships and stuff like that. Now, there were phases in your life when you did that. But again, there was a context, that was a brief period, and you were looking into that zone. And then again, you went back into an externalization. Now the pattern is repeating in a different way. Also, the danger of being disappointed is repeating. That's also looming, because if you do what you did in the past in the same way as you did it in the past, you're going to have the same results. So that's why inner work is important, even if it just means being mindful of yourself. How are you feeling? How are you responding? Is your response objective? All of these things. Are you feeling oppressed? Is there something that's not right in your environment? And before you come to a conclusion, really let that play out. Inner work doesn't have to be, for me, the stuff that people call inner work is only scratching the surface. Inner work is the simple process of living, but not just mindfully, but living from your whole embodied presence. Really, really living. You don't have to be so-called spiritual or in your head for that. You just need to feel, to be in the body, to be embodied, to open up your senses. You know how people say, live your moment like any moment like it's the last, Just stay awake and remind yourself to stay awake. That effort will help take away from your anxiety because, what they say, laziness is the devil's hand, or idle hands or the devil's something or other. Workshop or whatever.
It's interesting because one of the aftermaths of my surgery and everything was the numb feet. But that makes me walk slow and deliberate and feel. I can still feel my feet, but the right foot is really, really numb, and every foot has to be felt. So it does put me in touch with my body in a way that I never was before.
Now, you said, as I said in the blurb, that I pray that God starts caring about the world, and in whatever way possible.
This is an attempt to collect the
Oh, yeah?
I have the ringer off, but they're leaving a message, and there's another attempt to collect the debt.
Oh, I see.
don't deal with it's hospital bills.
Yeah,
deal with that.
No. You know, that'll eventually take care. What can they do? You know, I mean, they've taken everything they're going to take. The thing is that right now you are not a type of person where they can take anything anymore. You know, and that is the threshold of freedom. It's not freedom, but it gives you the ability. Look at where your life leads you. That's what a lot of people were trying to say, but again, they may not have been able to express it themselves because everybody's got challenges in their life. So your life has led you to a point where you have to walk deliberately.
Yeah, I just keep going.
You have to walk
mindfully. Stop the beeping.
Yeah. See, they're interfering with my train of thought and this discussion at this point.
I don't know how it's the answering machine. I don't know how to make it stop beeping.
That's okay. I mean, it's just a sound. I mean, the listeners put up with the crazy background at the internet cafe. I mean, occasional beep or two. It's just just came in and interfered that way, and lost my train of thought. But it's okay.
I'm sorry.
Because the point is, see, you mentioned about God caring, and then you said at the end, in however way He sees fit. Well, the however way He sees fit is the way your life has been going. Because right now, in your personal life, you are given hints about how to approach things. And because you were approaching things in the way that was hurtful to you, you were hurting yourself. And because of this addiction to expectation, because of course, impatience in the world, and even if it's from compassion, from a position of compassion and empathy, it still serves the establishment. And then the establishment can strike at you because even though you were doing all of this, you were still being effective. You were still influencing people. Your voice was still heard. That's why the other folks got mad, from the other place. They got really, really pissed because their voice, they influence a group of people. But it's the reason that does so. And anybody can be rational. Anybody who really, really opens and becomes objective, and reason is something you can learn to be. Empathy is something you can also learn, but it's much more difficult because there's so many things against it. It really helps if you've had it originally. You can cultivate it, but most people end up just imitating it. It's very, very hard to be so empathic that you draw other people's attention and they have faith in you. Because they're saying if anybody can tell us that something is going on and give us hope, is this guy. Because he has empathy. He has the strength to feel for others. A true empath is destroyed unless they have the strength to feel for others instead of just the ability. So empaths will always be, I don't want to say tested, but they will always be strained by the variability that gives them this admired quality. Because other people, then somebody might envy you, then you have to absorb that poison. Somebody might feel threatened by you, you have to absorb that poison. In the end, the establishment might consider you a threat, overtly or covertly. There may be forces in the world that are not just physical, corporeal, or rational. There may be other things involved, that, for example, the bank may have been acting on its own and whatever, so through a series of synchronistic events that may not have to do with secret societies or whatever, all of these things happen to you, but other non-corporeal forces may have been at work. Who knows what? I'm not saying there were. I'm saying that there's more to heaven than earth than most people think. And things are complex in terms of how we reason things out. We don't know. You can't just brush off things, and you can't just keep defaulting back into the normal rationalization of everything because the establishment keeps manipulating that. In my honest opinion, the only way to change the world effectively is in the way the psychopathic establishment cannot perceive or rationalize or understand. Because if it doesn't go beyond their paradigm, they're going to hijack you. They're going to do something. They have plans within plans. That's all they do. So that's where we're challenged. We're challenged to cultivate ourselves in a way where we transcend the very reach of psychopathy on the inside as victims and as, complacent, co-conspirators or unwilling co-conspirators just by believing in what the establishment believes. So that is the challenge. And if you say, well, the world is suffering, it's been suffering for thousands of years. And the psychopaths are the ones in a rush. It is not the world itself at this point. Yes, it needs to change and it is hurting and everything. But the rushing feeling, the urgency is coming from us, but it's coming from the psychopaths as well. It's basically something is going on here that everybody is freaked out about on a very deep visceral level. And because we're freaked out about it, we tend to say, okay, it must be the psychopaths that are bringing it about. But the psychopaths want to bring it about yesterday because they too think that if we don't bring our world order about, then it's not going to happen. Something else is going to happen. And all the while, just observe the way the psychology of everybody, not just the normal people that you relate to, but the psychopaths, everybody, and interconnect. And it helps alleviate anxiety, if anything, because you're busy observing and you're actually seeing something and you don't feel lost. And if you have an intuition and you want to open up to spirit or divine or whatever, it can help cultivate that intuition about how to connect the dots, because that's what I believe, call it God if you want, spirit, the purpose, that's what he, she wants. She wants us to participate in bringing heaven to earth, but not by the rules that we've been conditioned to think are valid, not by the games of psychopaths, through something completely different, but not so alien that it goes against our nature. Instinctively, like a little child, how would a little child bring about heaven and earth if it had the wisdom of someone who is open to reality as it is? It's almost like that. Enter the kingdom of heaven, it says you have to be like little children in some way. But then even Paul says, when I was a child, I did things like a child. Now I'm grown up. So there's a paradox here. It's not to be like a kid and it's not to be like an adult, but to be, and I was a teenager either, but to combine the two in a way, in a synthesis that we have yet to really rationalize. It's not part of our paradigm. We sense it. We know that, okay, innocence of a child, but then children are being molested and victimized. We can't be victims. And yet at the same time, in my honest opinion, we need to be responsible to get over this fear that any kind of admission that we need to correct our course is blaming the victim. Okay, if I take a gun and shoot my leg, I'm not going to blame the gun and say, no, you're blaming the victim. I'm the victim here. The gun shot me. I'm the one. No, your finger pulled the trigger, so take responsibility. Meditation is not the culprit here, it's how you did it. But at the same time, meditation is part of a much greater inner work conglomerate, an inner work system. It's called alchemy, and the truth of that has been suppressed through the ages. All we have that's popularized are little bits and pieces here. Of course they're not going to work as we want them to. They just give us something. But maybe they can, if we focus on the fact that there is something from the inside that we can cultivate, empowerment, strength, and whatever. And if we are determined, we can listen to what life tells us and take the next step. In your case, you are doing that. You're taking the next step deliberately. Even if life or God or whatever has forced you to slow down and feel where your numb foot hits the ground and is stable before you take the next step. And it may be frustrating, but the more you breathe and the more, when we feel frustration, we have energy. And that just means we are called upon to focus that energy on something else that is more constructive than what we've been focusing on before. So that's also a challenge. That's very, very, it asks us to be creative in our life, to be creative from the inside. So Ron, I don't know how you're going to take all of these thoughts and put them in a title,
Well, the title is Patterns of Expectation. I've already wrote that down earlier.
Beautiful. It's really nice. Okay. Maybe when we do our videos together so people can tell them apart from your own, just lay Aristo and Ron, or Ron and Aristo, on top.
Right.
And that could just distinguish them and stuff. So anyways, I didn't want to carry this over too much. And again, I wish you well. I hope your trip is everything beyond your expectations. And
I hope so, but I don't know.
Brings you pleasant surprises, but I do think there's always something to learn from it. And when you come back, you will bring back something, because this is a new beginning. You're done with the phases of the previous expectations. There's something else coming. And so, you say, okay, what's done is done. What's happened is happened. And they still may try to attack you because you still have a voice. And right now, many people have been disappointed because they have been exposed to levels of pain that would turn away the most, courageous saint, So, and you have been expressing those levels of pain, and it's not pretty. And everybody has their own shit to deal with, too. So, that's the reality of it. So now that you're moving through this phase, I do believe that you're coming back into a position of re-recognizing that gift you have, the gift of connecting with other people, and applying that gift in the sense of your own path directly, instead of projecting it all onto what other people are doing. And you never know how that can become a source of gravity for something very beautiful and very meaningful.
Well, so that's a pattern of discovery too.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you, Aristo. Appreciate your wisdom, and I'm going to have to listen to this a couple or a few times myself. If for nothing else, to get the blurb. Yeah.
Right. There was no politics, no nothing. Use whatever blurb you want. I think everything was basically clear. It's not easy. It's not easy to communicate, but it's also not easy to get, because it tries to go against the cognitive dissonance that we've been programmed to just be mired in. A perpetual state of habitual cognitive, unless you follow this narrow path of normal rationalization, whether you're talking about New Age or whatever, or religion, everything's always along this that makes us feel, okay, politically correct, comfortable, and whatever. So it's understandable if things are difficult to grasp, but I'm sure we're all capable of doing so with a little patience and a little determination. Thank you very much for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Aristo. Namaste.
Namaste.